Willow Creek was the kind of town you'd find on a dusty, forgotten map. It was small, quiet, and so safe that most folks didn't even bother closing their curtains at night. Life was simple, predictable. Nothing ever happened there. Until one night. The old town clock had just struck midnight, and a deep silence settled over the streets. Then, at exactly 12:03 a.m., a sound cut through the quiet. Toke, toke, toke. It was a faint rhythmic noise, echoing down the empty lane where 22-year-old Evan lived. Evan was a college student, hunched over his laptop, racing to finish an essay that was due in the morning. He was so focused, the sound barely registered at first. But then it came again. Toke, toke, toke. This time it was slower, more deliberate. It was too soft to be an urgent knock, but too precise to be an accident, like a branch tapping against a window. He paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, and listened. Nothing. Just the low hum of his computer. He shook his head, blaming it on exhaustion, and went back to typing. A few minutes passed. The silence returned, and Evan was just getting back into his writing rhythm when the third knock came. This one was different. It was louder, sharper, right on his front door. Toke, toke, toke. It wasn't frantic, but it was firm, demanding. It was the kind of knock that said, "I know you're in there." The shiver ran down Evan's spine. Who would be out at this hour? He wasn't expecting anyone, and his friends always texted first. He slowly got up from his chair, his heart starting to pound against his ribs. He tiptoed to the door, his breath held tight in his chest. The curtains on the front window were open just a crack, and he peered through. The street was bathed in the pale, eerie glow of a single streetlight. It was completely empty. Not a car, not a person, not even a stray cat. He thought maybe he'd imagined it, that his tired mind was playing tricks on him. He was about to turn away to convince himself it was nothing when the knocking started again, this time on the back door. Toke, 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 slow, steady, and closer than ever. Every hair on his body stood on end. He was no longer alone in the house. Something was outside, and it wanted in. Thanks for watching. If you want to find out what happens next to Evan, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. See you in the next one. Something strange happened last night. I still can't shake the feeling. I was just about to head to bed when I heard a faint sound at my front door. Not a knock, more like a soft, wet scratching. I crept over and looked through the peephole. Standing there was a little girl, maybe 12 years old at most. She was completely drenched, water dripping from her hair and the hem of her thin white dress. She was barefoot, standing perfectly still on my cold concrete porch. The most unsettling part, her eyes. They were wide open, staring directly into the peephole. It felt like she wasn't just looking at the door, but right through it, right at me. A shiver ran down my spine, but my first instinct was concern. I leaned in close to the door and whispered, Are you okay? Are you lost?" The girl didn't move. She didn't even blink. Then she spoke. "Can I come inside? I'm cold." Her voice was the strangest thing I'd ever heard. It was flat and hollow, but it seemed to vibrate right inside my head, like the sound was coming from the peephole itself, not from outside. I was frozen, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't right. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Before I could even think of a reply, the girl's head tilted to the side. It wasn't a normal movement. It was slow and stiff, at an angle that looked completely unnatural, almost painful. Her wide, unblinking eyes never left the spot where mine had been. Then, just as silently as she had appeared, she turned. She didn't run or hurry. She just slowly walked away from my door, her bare feet making no sound on the wet ground, until she was swallowed by the darkness at the edge of my lawn. I stood there for what felt like an hour, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. I checked every lock in the house twice. I don't know who she was or what she was, but I know one thing for sure. I'm never opening my door after dark again. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more strange stories. Stay safe out there. Ever have that feeling you're being watched? For Evan, it started with a knock, a soft, timid knock late one rainy night. He peered through the peephole but saw no one, just the glistening, rain-soaked street under a dim lamppost. He figured it was just kids playing a prank and went back to bed. The next morning, though, something was off. As he stepped out for his morning coffee, he froze. There on his doorstep were tiny, wet footprints, child-sized. But here's the chilling part. It hadn't rained since he went to sleep. The pavement was bone-dry. He followed the prints with his eyes, expecting them to lead to the sidewalk. They didn't. They led away from his door, across the small patch of grass, and straight into the dense, dark forest that bordered his apartment complex. An uneasy feeling settled in his stomach. He spent the day asking neighbors, the mailman, anyone he could find. Did anyone see a little girl this morning? No one had. Most just shrugged, but one old man who was always sitting on the park bench, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, beckoned him closer. He leaned in, his voice a raspy whisper that smelled of old tobacco. You saw the prints, didn't you? Evan nodded, confused. The old man's eyes darted around nervously. The midnight child, he hissed. She comes once every 10 years, always on a rainy night. She knocks, looking for shelter. Evan felt a cold dread creep up his spine. The old man continued, his voice barely audible. She tests you. If you open the door, you're safe. But if you ignore her, she leaves you a little reminder. A promise of her return. He paused, looking Evan dead in the eye. But Lord help the soul who actually lets her in. Whoever opens that door for her is never seen again. Evan walked home, the old man's words echoing in his mind. He remembered the knock, the empty peephole, and the wet footprints leading into the woods. He hadn't opened the door. He was safe for now. But as he looked at the calendar, a terrifying realization washed over him. In 10 years to the day, another rainy night would come, and he'd hear that soft, timid knock once again. The question is, will he be able to resist opening the door next time? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. See you next time. That night, Evan stayed awake. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. He tried to convince himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him, a hallucination. A waking nightmare brought on by stress, or maybe just too much coffee. He'd read about things like that. Auditory hallucinations. Your brain creates sounds that aren't really there. That had to be it. It was the only logical explanation. He repeated it to himself like a mantra. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. He squeezed his eyes shut, hoping that when he opened them, the sun would be streaming through his window, and the memory of the knocking would feel distant and foolish. But the night stretched on, silent and suffocating. He kept glancing at his alarm clock. The red numbers glowed in the dark, mocking him. 12:01, 12:02, each minute felt like an hour. He held his breath, every muscle in his body tense. Then it happened. Exactly at 12:03 a.m., a sound. But this time, it wasn't on his front door. It was sharper, closer. A rap tap-tapping sound that made his blood run cold. It was coming from his window, the one right next to his bed. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't even breathe. He thought, if I ignore it, maybe it will go away. But the knocking came again, more insistent this time. Tap, tap, tap. Against his will, his hand moved, reaching for the edge of the curtain. His fingers trembled as they brushed against the fabric. He had to know. He had to see. With a final shaky breath, Evan pulled the curtain aside, and his world stopped. The same girl was there, pressed against the glass. Her face was distorted, flattened against the pane, her features grotesque and inhuman. Her eyes were completely white, like two polished marbles, reflecting the faint moonlight. And this time her lips moved. They peeled back from her teeth in a slow, unnatural way, and she mouthed the words. Silent but clear. "You already let me in." Evan froze, his mind reeling. He never opened the door. He was sure of it. How could she say that? It was impossible. A blast of icy air suddenly filled the room, so cold it burned his lungs. The temperature plummeted, and his breath plumed in front of his face. Then Evan slowly, so slowly, turned around. And there she was. The girl was standing inside his room, by the foot of his bed, her white eyes fixed on him. A twisted smile spread across her face. Terrified, Evan dove headfirst into the town's unsettling history. He spent hours at the local library, the smell of old paper and dust clinging to the air. Tucked away in a forgotten corner, he found it, a single dusty VHS tape. The label, handwritten in faded ink, read Midnight Girl, 1994 incident. His heart pounded against his ribs. He located an old VCR in the library's archive room, the machine whirring to life with a groan. The tape started. Grainy footage showed a family, their faces pale and drawn with fear. They spoke in hushed, panicked tones about nightly knocks, a persistent tapping that started right after sundown. They heard a child's voice, small and pleading, asking to be let inside. One night, they couldn't bear the pitiful cries any longer. They opened the door, and just then, the tape cut to a screen of pure static. From the speakers, a distorted, trembling voiceover crackled through. "Don't speak to her," it warned. "Don't ever speak to her. If she hears your voice, she follows you." Evan's hands shook so badly he could barely press the eject button. He replayed the warning in his mind, a cold dread washing over him. He never spoke to the girl. He never even whispered her name. He certainly never, ever let her in. He was safe, right? He had followed the unwritten rules. But then, why? Why, when he got back to his room, and his gaze fell upon the darkened corner by his closet, did he see a small, shadowy figure standing there, already inside? The forest floor was a mess of snapped twigs and mud, but the footprints were unmistakable. Evan followed them, a knot tightening in his stomach with every step. The trail led him deeper into the woods, where a thick, unnatural fog clung to the dead trees, choking the life out of the air. It felt like walking into another world, one that had been forgotten by the sun. And then he saw it. A small, dilapidated wooden cabin, barely standing, almost swallowed by the overgrown wilderness. It looked ancient, as if it had grown from the dark soil itself. The door creaked open with a gentle push, revealing an interior steeped in shadow and the smell of damp earth and decay. A chill colder than the forest air slithered down Evan's spine. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, landing on the walls. They were covered, absolutely covered, in small, wet handprints. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, layered over each other like a grotesque wallpaper. They looked fresh. As he swept the light across the floor, he saw something else. Words, crudely carved into the wooden planks. The message was simple and terrifying. "She waits." His heart hammered against his ribs. What did it mean? Who was she? He moved cautiously toward a back room, the floorboards groaning under his weight. The stench of decay was stronger here. His light found the source. A man was tied to a chair. His eyes were wide open, his face a frozen mask of pure, undiluted terror. He'd been dead for a long time. On a small, dusty table next to the chair lay a single object, a small black voice recorder. With a trembling hand, Evan picked it up and pressed the play button. The hiss of static filled the dead silence, and then a little girl's whisper, "Can I come inside?" It said, sweet and chilling. A man's voice, ragged with panic, replied, "No, please don't." His plea was cut short by a sudden sharp knocking sound. The knocking grew frantic. Then came the man's screams, a raw, guttural sound of agony that ended as abruptly as it began. And then just silence. The recording stopped. In that exact moment, as the last bit of static faded, Evan heard it, a soft shuffling sound right behind him. If you love stories that send a shiver down your spine, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a new tale from the shadows. Thanks for watching. Evan stumbled out of the cabin, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The splintered wood of the doorframe scraped his shoulder, but he barely felt it. All he could think about was the woman, the impossible woman, who had been sitting in his living room, dripping water onto his antique rug. Her voice, a melodic whisper that promised friendship and secrets, still echoed in his mind. "May I come in?" She had asked, her eyes wide and pleading. He had hesitated, a strange unease prickling his skin. Something about her was just off. He'd muttered a polite, "No, thank you," and quickly shut the door, locking it tight. But moments later, he heard the floorboards creak behind him. She was already inside. Panic sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He fled, not looking back, convinced she was right behind him. The cool night air hit his face as he burst from the tree line, his own house now in sight across the field. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers slick with sweat, ready to dial for help. But before he could, the screen lit up with a notification, an unknown number. The message was short, chillingly direct. "Stop following me?" His blood ran cold. Following her? He was running asterisk from asterisk her. Before he could even process the first message, a second one arrived. It was a picture. His stomach lurched as he recognized the room. It was his bedroom. The photo was taken from a low angle, pointing toward the bed, and from the shadows beneath it, a figure was emerging. A pale, gaunt figure in a soaking wet white dress, her long black hair plastered to her face. She was crawling out, her limbs moving at an unnatural angle. Evan's breath caught in his throat. He was still outside, staring at his house, but she was already in there, waiting for him. That's when the horrifying truth crashed down on him. She doesn't need your permission to enter your home. She only asks for it. It's a game to her, a way to establish control. If you say yes, you welcome her in, and you become her puppet, a mindless doll to do her bidding for eternity. But if you say no, she doesn't just go away. She breaks you. She shatters your mind, your reality, your very soul, piece by agonizing piece. He looked from the phone to his front door, which was now slowly creaking open. She was inviting him in this time, and he knew with dreadful certainty that he had no choice but to accept. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chills. Evan checked the time. 12:03 a.m. He had locked every door, every window. The phone was off, the curtains drawn tight. Silence. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. A wave of relief washed over him as he let out a long, slow breath. Maybe he was finally safe. Maybe it was all in his head. But then, the phone on the table, the one he had personally switched off, flickered to life. The screen glowed with an eerie light, and a voice note began to play all on its own. It was a girl's whisper, chilling and close, as if she were standing right behind him. "Can I come inside?" Evan squeezed his eyes shut, his heart hammering against his ribs. He didn't dare to speak, didn't dare to move. The air in the room instantly turned ice cold, his breath misting in front of him. A floorboard creaked from the ceiling above. Then another, closer, from behind the sofa. The sound moved, stalking him in the darkness, until it was right next to his ear. A cold, wet whisper slithered into his hearing. You already did, double quotes. The lights in the apartment began to flicker violently, buzzing and popping. A blood-curdling screech ripped through the silence, followed by the sound of shattering glass. A final, terrified scream echoed, and then nothing. The next morning, Evan's apartment was found completely empty. All his belongings were gone. All signs of him had vanished. Only one thing remained, a trail of fresh, wet footprints, leading from his bedroom door out into the hallway and away into the night. They say that since that night, in every home across the small town of Willow Creek, the knocking returns. Precisely at 12:03 a.m., a soft patient 3 knocks on the door. Toke, 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 followed by that same sweet whisper, "Can I come inside?" What would you do? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more chilling tales. We'll see you in the next one.